The chance to hit 10 wins versus a chance to make a bowl game. A coach who's given 25 years to his program versus a coach who's only been on campus for 11 months. This rivalry might fly under the radar to most college football fans, but to Nebraska and Iowa, this one means everything. On the surface, of course, the top 20 teams should be able to pull this one out, but Vegas thinks this matchup favors the other side. So today, we'll talk about why Iowa's the underdog and what it'll take for Nebraska to beat them for the second year in a row. But what's up, guys? I'm Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Crazed. If you're a fan of Nebraska or the Big Ten, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss my post-game live stream. And if you were shocked to see Nebraska listed as the favorite, hit the like button and help us get to 1,000. But now, let's get into it.
He's hit and sacked. He's taking a shot downfield, wide open end zone, caught, touchdown.
These last few weeks, I've been hearing Rule say that a lot of players love being a part of the program and that the energy's so good inside the facility that guys keep telling him they want to come back. And I assume that was true for underclassmen or the dudes with no pro future. But today, Ty Robinson announced that he'd be back for a 5th season, which makes me think Ben Hart and Hutmacher will opt to stay too. And you know this, I'm sure, but the key to getting this thing turned around is developing guys in this new system. And it takes more than 1 year with a whole new staff and a new culture to reach their full potential. So hopefully the defense returning 6 or 7 starters from a unit that ranked inside the top 20 means they're going to have an even higher ceiling next year. And if they can put up even better numbers, we're going to start to see good players leave as great ones. And the path to the NFL finally exists at Nebraska again. When you play your rival, it's all about motivation, and Nebraska fans know what's on the line for their team. The best regular season finish in the last 7 years, a bowl game and the extra practices that come with it, and most importantly, momentum to help Rule recruit and get the state pumped up for his second year in Lincoln. On the surface, Iowa doesn't have as much to play for. They already won the West. Their bowl position isn't going to change unless they win in Indianapolis, and they can still hit 10 wins this season, even if they lose this week. But if you're in their locker room, there's more to it. One, because Ferentz could opt to retire at the end of December, and this would be his last chance to beat Nebraska. 2, because they had to give up the trophy last year on their home field and they want to avenge that loss. And 3, above all else, they're ranked in the top 20, listed as an underdog against a team on a 3-game losing streak. And there's nothing more disrespectful than proving you're the top dog all season long and then being told by the experts that you're supposed to lose to your rival who hasn't won a game since October. You look back to when Nebraska went to Iowa City with Casey Thompson and beat them at their own game, putting up over 300 yards on offense, forcing 4 turnovers, and then controlling time of possession. Matt Rule watched that game on TV and saw what it takes to beat Kirk, but this time around, he's got to do it himself. Nebraska hasn't beaten Iowa at home since they joined the Big Ten back in 2011, and since then, they've only won 4 out of the 12 games they played. The last 5 all came down to a touchdown or a field goal, and even though they had a 17-point lead in the third quarter, Nebraska needed a pick in the last 45 seconds to make it out with a win. It took 7 years of losing to finally break the streak, but they pulled it off because they beat them at their own game. Nebraska held the ball for 3 minutes longer. They went +3 in turnover margin. They had less penalty yards, and at the end of the game, when it came down to who could make a play, it was the defense that dug deep and found a way to get it done. History's been on Iowa's side, but Rule has a chance to set the tone early for how this rivalry is going to play out over the next few years. Teams are never at full strength by the end of November, but Nebraska's gotten surprisingly healthy over these last few weeks. All 3 QBs are practicing and available. Marquise Buford started multiple games now after he missed the first 8, and Billy Kemp, who went down with a knee injury against Northwestern, bounced back with 8 catches at Wisconsin. The biggest injury news in the last 2 weeks was Iowa's star corner Cooper DeJean, who had 5 interceptions and 75 tackles, but without him, they held Illinois' QB to 200 yards on 47 attempts, and he only completed 46% of his throws. Most of the season-ending news for both sides came early on in the year, so there's been plenty of time for backups to own their new roles, and for the first time in a while, injuries aren't going to be an excuse for poor play by any position group. I think we're all expecting a one-score game again, and when I was watching Adam Carricker's video about how Nebraska can immediately improve, he mentioned there have been 29 one-score losses over the past 6 years, and this season alone, we've already seen 4. But the good news is this team learned how to win in a one-score situation with a 7-point finish against Iowa last year. So there's reason to believe they can do it again. And Adam hasn't released a score prediction yet, but once he does, I'll head to his website, characterchronicles.com, to check out what he has to say. And if you want to see his preview, you can click the link in the description below, and I linked his site there so it's easy for you to find. Nebraska's been bad on offense, but Iowa's been even worse, and they rank dead last with less than 2,700 total yards and only 245 yards a game. But that doesn't give me much confidence since both Minnesota and Michigan State are only a few slots above them, and they still found ways to pull off wins. Their strengths in the run game, which is led by LaShawn Williams and Caleb Johnson, who've combined for over 1,000 yards so far, but they only average about 4.5 yards a carry, which is almost identical to what Emmett Johnson and Anthony Grant are doing. And Deacon Hill started the last 6 games at quarterback, but he's only completed 49% of his throws for 880 yards, 5 TDs, and 5 interceptions. So he's not a guy you got to worry about leading a game-winning drive the way that Tanner Mordecai or Talia Tagovailoa was able to. Where they've got the edge on offense is once they get into the red zone. On 29 attempts, they've scored 25 times, and even though half of those scores were field goals, they could trust their guy to make it since he makes almost 75% of his attempts. Now, I'm not worried about the defense breaking down and giving up QB rush yards on missed tackles like they did last week, but where Iowa beats teams is late in the game when their line executes a play perfectly, the running back breaks one tackle, and then a 30-yard run ends their drive with points to create a little separation. Last year's game was won off 4 turnovers, but this year they're going to take a lot better care of the ball, knowing they just need to wait for Nebraska's offense to make the mistake. On defense, they've been just as dominant as they have in the past, and they rank 7th nationally, 8 spots above Nebraska. Against the run, they've been great, and they only give up 108 yards a game, but even more impressive, they've only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns this entire year. Statistically, Nebraska's run D is their strength and Iowa's pass defense is stronger, but the reality is these two teams are identical on both sides of the ball, and the only things that matter are turnovers, penalties, and making a play on 3rd or 4th down when the game's on the line. I dropped a poll for subscribers asking what you thought about Nebraska being listed as the favorite this week, and over 60% responded saying the line doesn't make sense. And right now I saw Nebraska listed at -2, and then I went and checked FanDuel, and they're offering them at -2.5. Now, I don't know if you want to bet on this game, but today's sponsor is BroThrow, and I've been using the site for the last year because it's available in all 50 states. It doesn't require a deposit. There are no minimums or withdrawal requirements, and most importantly, you don't pay a 10% VIG since it's not a sports book, which means if you bet $50 on a game, you win $50. I've seen comments saying this is the week to make all your money betting Iowa as an underdog. So if you want to bet on the spread, total, or money line with better odds than any site you're using, you can join us for free at brothrow.com/GBR to take action on this game or any of the others you're watching this week. Nebraska's at home, but these two teams are in very different places. Iowa's coming off a 3-game win streak, while Rules watched his team fold 3 weeks in a row. You get 3 points for being at home, which means Iowa would be a 1-point favorite if this was on a neutral site, but that still seems low when you look at both of their trajectories. I think it goes back to what I said about these teams being identical on both sides of the ball. Really strong defenses, decent offensive lines and running backs, below average QB and receiver play, and the exact same strategy to winning almost all of their games. It's a toss-up and a question of who's going to make the bigger mistake at the wrong time. The total set at 26, meaning Vegas thinks that Nebraska is going to win 14-12, and that sounds like a pretty fair final score, but I could see it being 9-6 or 6-3 just as easily. Either way, if I'm betting Nebraska this week, I'm just playing the money line to be safe since I've seen plenty of 1 or 2 point finishes in the Big Ten West. We talked about motivation being such a key factor earlier, and with all that this team's been through in year 1 and now being so close to getting bowl eligible, we all know Nebraska's going to treat this game like a Super Bowl. They've played bad enough to learn from their mistakes, and they overcame enough adversity early on in the season to set them up for success in a game like they get to play Friday. Chuba's going to play at home as the starter for the first time this year, coming off a really clean game in Madison where he proved that he has what it takes to keep drives alive. The defense that's been so consistent all year faces the worst offense they've seen in weeks, and now they'll get their chance to redeem themselves after a few bad plays and some missed tackles last week. After Saturday, I thought there was no way I could pick them to win. This team just found a new way to kill themselves, but now I'm sitting here lying to myself, trying to explain why I think Iowa's going to win. And it's one thing to lie to myself, but I can't lie to you. So I'm taking Nebraska to win at home 20-17 because if their offense plays clean, I know they can march it down the field to get in the end zone. And I can't say the same for Iowa. And note, so far, Big Ten teams are 6-2 on Senior Day. So if that trend's telling us anything, it's that the last home game of the season means just a little more than the rest of them. A win Friday means this season goes down as a success, but a loss leaves us with some questions going into the offseason. So for Matt Rule's sake, let's all cheer a little bit harder this week and hope his players execute the best they have all season. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments below. Can Nebraska end Iowa's winning streak in Lincoln, or are they going to extend it to 6 games? Are you pumped for this week, or are you over this season and ready to move on to the next? And do you think the defense can hold Iowa to less than 14? I really think 2 touchdowns is the max they can give up, because anything more than that, and the offense is going to have to click at a really high level. But I'll be live right here after the game on Friday. So until then, thank you for being here. Have a great Thanksgiving, and I will see you in the next one. Go Big Red.